Hello, my name is Sinclair, aka the Health Nerd, and welcome to the first edition of Systems with Sinclair. Well, I'll go over different bodily systems, give you a little bit of a better understanding of what is happening inside of your body, because I truly believe that that is one of the first steps towards achieving better health. This week, the first edition, we're going to go over blood pressure. High blood pressure, low blood pressure, what does it all mean and what is happening in our bodies? So I'll first start off with going over the two different numbers that you get when you're getting a blood pressure reading. The idea is that it's kind of the law of the universe, right? Whatever you put out into the universe and you are committed to it, the universe will bring that to you. You will start to see. The first one, the top number is the systolic blood pressure. And the bottom number is the diastolic blood pressure. What those mean, the systolic, the top number, that is the amount of pressure that your blood is putting on the arteries when your heart is beating. The bottom number, the diastolic blood pressure, that is the amount of the amount of pressure that your blood is putting on the arteries in between those beats, right? So we all know our heartbeat, dum dum, dum dum, dum dum. So the top number is what's happening while your heart is beating. The bottom number is what's happening in between those beats. Hopefully that clears that up a little bit. I know I was always confused on what do these numbers even mean. So let's talk about what is good and bad numbers to receive. So the top number, the systolic blood pressure. You want that number to be 120 or lower. And the bottom number, the diastolic blood pressure, you want to be 80 or lower. So in general, when you are receiving a blood pressure reading, the numbers you want to see are going to be 120 over 80 or lower for either of those numbers. But I wanted to explain a little bit more about what is actually happening. These numbers are great. What does this mean inside of the body? So I want to give an analogy. Imagine a garden hose, something I think most of us are familiar with. Either whether you were a kid and you were playing around with the garden hose, or you're watching the gardener, or your mom or dad, who is, watering the grass. You have your typical garden hose, and this is not one with the fancy, adapter that can do all the different modes, talking old school. So a typical garden hose, right? It's about this thick. If you wanted to increase the pressure, let's say you wanted to use it to wash your car. Let's say you wanted to spray your cousin in the face, right? How do you do that? Well, what you usually do is, right, you put your thumb over it. And what is that doing? That is making the hole smaller. It is making the hole where the water is coming out. It is making it smaller when you put your thumb over it. And as soon as you put your thumb over it, it goes way faster, right? You can use it to water grass. You can aim it at a different direction because it increases the amount of pressure of the water coming out of the hose. Think of your blood vessels and your arteries the same way. So you want them to be as wide as possible, because when it's as wide as possible, right? When your thumb is not in front of the water hose, it's flowing nice and freely. It's not super pressurized. It's something that if you put it at your face, it's not going to hurt your face, right? It's nice and free flowing. So that's like kind of a less stressful environment, right? For the water to flow through. That's what you want to create in your body. You want your blood vessels and your arteries to be as wide as possible so that it can allow the blood to flow through without any extra stress, without any extra power needing to fight through the blood vessels and the arteries. What happens in the body is that, either through us eating poor diets or just being extra stressed out, there are things that can start to build up within the arteries and within the blood vessels. And what that does is it slowly starts to make the hole smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, so that the blood is having to really fight through those blood vessels to get where it needs to go. Your heart, all of your organs need a consistent flow of blood in order to do what they need to do. So you want your job, right? Your job into keeping your body healthy is to make sure that your blood vessels and arteries are staying as wide as possible, so that within the healthy range, so that the blood can again flow through and get wherever it needs to go. So hopefully that analogy makes a little bit of sense. But this is a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of a background on what blood pressure is, why you want to maintain lower blood pressure, i.e. wider blood vessels, so that the blood can flow through. It can get to your heart, it can get to your brain, right? Because what you don't want to happen is for it to not be able to reach its destination. Because what happens then, if you're talking about your heart, that's what triggers a heart attack, if your blood is not able to get to your heart. And a stroke is the same thing to your brain. Your brain also needs a constant flow of blood. When your brain does not get the blood it needs, that's what triggers a stroke, which can lead to loss of a lot of different motor functionality and other things, memory, you name it. Those are really, really, really important reasons why blood pressure is a very important marker of your health, of your overall health, and why you want to pay very close attention to it. There are at-home blood pressure tests you can get. A lot of times when you go to like a CVS or a Walgreens, they have the free tests that you can use, the ones you stick your arm through. And then also every time you go to the doctor's office, they always take your blood pressure as well. So again, just to recap, you got your systolic and your diastolic blood pressure. Systolic is when the heart is beating. Diastolic is in between beats. And we want to be doing things and eating things that can keep our blood vessels nice and relaxed, nice and wide, so that the blood can go everywhere it needs to go. All right, we're going to talk about some of those habits in our Be Well Wednesday video, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining me for this first edition of Systems with Sinclair, where we went over blood pressure, and next week we'll go over another bodily system, and we'll keep going until hopefully you have a better understanding of what's going on inside of your body. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.